Hi, welcome to Bantier. This is a different video style than I usually do, and the reason for that was I was going to do my usual video style covering one of my favorite bands of all time, Within Temptation, but what ended up happening was, I guess the record label is really strict about copyright, and even though I'm using it in a transformative way, it did get taken down right away. So instead, I'm just going to it's going to be a little more boring, but I'm just going to sit here and talk about Within Temptation instead, and rank all 7 of their studio albums. So, coming in at number 7 is their debut album from 1997, Enter. This is the most different out of any of the Within Temptation albums. It features Robert Westerholt on vocals, and he does some death metal growling on this album, and it's got a lot of really good stuff. I'm a big fan of that opening song, Restless. That's a really beautiful ballad. The title track's really good. And Candles is another one. Grace is one of my all-time favorite Within Temptation songs. But as an overall album, Enter just kind of feels like it's a bit directionless. Like, a lot of times these songs will feel like they're like carrying on or just noodling in one spot. And there's a lot of long instrumental breaks, which not part of what makes Within Temptation so good. A huge part of what makes Within Temptation so good is the voice of Sharon Den Adel. So that's why Enter is my least favorite Within Temptation album. However, I do still enjoy it, and I would recommend listening to it. Number 6 is Resist. This is their most recent album. It came out in 2019. Just a hair's breadth between this and Enter for that bottom spot. Now, Resist is the complete opposite. This feels like the most mainstream Within Temptation album. And a lot of these songs are really catchy. Supernova, that's my favorite on the album. I love it. I love that like keyboard synth part. The Reckoning, the opening song. That's a really good one, featuring Jacoby Shaddix of Papa Roach. But as an album, it's definitely not one of the best that Within Temptation have put out. I'm not a huge fan when metal bands that sound really, really good on their own go for a more electronic sound, and that's what Resist does. And it doesn't have one of those like super emotional pieces that the other Within Temptation albums do. So as a result, I'm not as big a fan of Resist as the other albums, but I still do like it, and I would also recommend checking it out. This band doesn't have a weak album. Number 5 is The Silent Force. Now, this one may come as a shock to a lot of people who are like, oh my god, The Silent Force at number 5? What are you, out of your mind? Let me explain. The Silent Force, vocally, and just the highs of this album are incredibly good. Memories and Angels are the 2 songs that got me into Within Temptation, and to this day, they're 2 of my favorite songs that they've ever put out. But this album, it's pretty much like the Sharon Show. The rest of the band doesn't really feel like they're contributing as much on this album as they usually do. And when you have a band like Within Temptation, which has 2 great guitar players, I feel like the Silent Force doesn't really utilize those guitar players as much as they should. However, this album is still very, very strong, and it's got some epic songs on it as well, even on the hard rock side. It's The Fear, that's a deep cut, that's a favorite of mine. And then, of course, like those massive songs like Stand My Ground and To Jillian I'd Give My Heart. Number 4, this one is another, like, one people are going to call blasphemy, but I'm going to put Hydra at number 4. Yeah, I like Hydra better than The Silent Force. This album does not get received very well by fans of Within Temptation, and I would say the general consensus is that this is their worst album. But I've always really liked it, and it's different, but it's great. This album features a lot of really interesting collabs, including a song with Exhibit called And We Run. They're just fantastic. Paradise, What About Us, one of the best Within Temptation songs ever. And Rude really delivers a lot of amazing guitar solos on here. And Sharon sounds great on every track. There are some songs that are not as good as the other ones. I'm not a huge fan of Dog Days, but the highs of this album are so, so good. And overall, I would say that this album is really great from front to back. Getting into the top 3, at number 3 we have Mother Earth. This is the most classical and symphonic Within Temptation album. This was their sophomore, released in 2000. And wow, what a way to get a whole bunch of people into like into the new band. This was really, really good. The title track and Ice Queen alone are just out of this world. This album feels magical. It's one of those albums that like transports you to another world when you listen to it. Sharon is at her highest and most angelic on this album, and it's just got a lot of these super long epic songs that are just so good, like The Promise and Deceiver of Fools. This is an album I can listen to over and over and over again, and I think it is one of the best examples of a symphonic metal album to have been released. Coming in at number 2, there is a tiny difference between these top 2 albums. These are 2 of my favorite albums ever, so it is difficult to decide which one I like better. But at number 2, I'm going to go with The Unforgiving. This album is the first one of the new modern era of Within Temptation that's going for that more stadium rock sound. And oh my god, this album is just perfect. Right from that opening song, Shot in the Dark, all the way to the finish of Stairway to the Skies. Iron off this album is my favorite Within Temptation song ever. That has a crazy guitar solo. And this is an album that is full of massive choruses and just these infectious hooks throughout the album. It's even got some popular songs like Shinee, but that remains one of my personal favorites from this band. And the ballads here are so good, like Lost and Fire and Ice, and the closing song Stairway to the Skies. And then you have the bigger like rock anthems like Faster and In the Middle of the Night. And then you just have this album really picks up towards the end too, which is something I like when you have songs like Murder and A Demon's Fate that just rock. Unforgiving is truly incredible. And then at number 1, we have The Heart of Everything. As far as I'm concerned, this is the greatest symphonic metal album of all time. It is just out of this world from front to back. From that little opening with that quiet notes sung by Sharon, and then the riff just comes in, and oh my god, on that song, The Howling. And you go into What Have You Done?, which features Mina Caputo of Life of Agony, which is a band that, or a singer that you wouldn't really think would collaborate with a band like Within Temptation, but it works fantastic. It's got these emotional ballads that just rip your heart out, like Frozen, All I Need, Forgiven. The Truth Beneath the Rose, close to the end of this album, is just a 7-minute incredible song. This is an album that I think everyone who likes metal should listen to from front to back. It's one of the best metal albums of the 21st century, and it is my favorite Within Temptation album by a hair. So, I'm sorry I couldn't get like the proper style video out for this. I did make one. It was over an hour long, and it was my favorite video that I've made, but the copyright people did not approve of it, so here's this little brief explanation on Within Temptation's albums, and hopefully next one we'll have a proper style video covering AFI, which is a punk rock band from California.